And good morning. We're live on YouTube on the Falcons Podcast. We want to be live on Facebook too, at least so a few of you can see us. That as they strangle the algorithm, that's Atlanta Falcons fans, Atlanta Falcons on SI, and we'll go to. Why don't we just go to Scout Kennedy on X as well, just for the heck of it, and then we'll get started here on a Monday as we get down to the 53-man roster. Welcome in. Let's try this again. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. My name is Scott Kennedy. I will be your host today. It's just me this morning. Nick is out hiking some gorgeous place out west, so he will not be joining us today. So it's just us to talk about the 53-man roster. And the Falcons have already begun making some cuts. They made 12 yesterday, including some that, it was a little bit of an eyebrow raiser, a little bit of a surprise. But if you've been watching this podcast, and if you're in this early, you have. That cut probably wasn't as big a surprise for you because we brought it to your attention after the Detroit Lions game. The guy we're talking about, obviously, is Morgan Fox. Morgan Fox was brought in. He got $3 million guaranteed. He did not make this roster. He was part of the cuts yesterday. And it's not probably because he was one of the bottom 90 players, but this gives him a chance to now hook up with somebody else fairly quickly. And, it wasn't really a surprise just based on if you're watching what they do instead of what they say, which is what I always tell you to do, watch what they do, not what they say. When he's getting 8 snaps, that's fine, 8 snaps, but in the third quarter are his first and only snaps of the first preseason game on a Raheem Morris who disdains the preseason, and he's out there at the end, but he didn't play any in the first half because, like I said, or like I was going to say, James Pierce ended up playing most of a game. That's different. He played from the beginning till the end in the second game. And then you're like, wait a minute, that was too much. Let's not play him anymore. He was out there first. Morgan Fox was out there last. So when he gets 8 snaps in at the end against Detroit, we immediately kind of started scratching our chins a little bit saying, he's in danger here. Look at the rotation. ESPN's got him pegged in as a starter. I'm not sure he's going to make this team. He didn't make this team. That is, and as Mad Scientist says, figuring they liked our guys better. And I've seen this discussion here, and I'm going to be a little critical of this move from the beginning. People, the apologists want to say, or the ultimate, this is good news. It means, that our guys are in good shape and they like the young guys better and all that. That's fine. But part of roster management, part of salary cap management is scouting your own team and knowing what you have. And then you augment that in free agency. Well, it's just $3 million. Do you know how many players on the Atlanta Falcons have higher than a $3 million salary cap this year? Salary cap hit this year. How many of them do? 23. So on a 53-man roster, 55% of the players have less than a $3 million salary cap hit. Let's not act like $3 million is nothing. It's a waste. So if you like your guys, fine, trust them. And if the guy's not even good enough to make your roster, if you're thinking it's even this close, and you should know that by the time you get to free agency and you do that, it's scouting your own roster. It's the internal scouting on this. And I know Mad Scientist says, I know I never said it wasn't a waste. This isn't about you. This is I see on X, and God, I hate reading comments on X. Then it's $3 million that you could have spent somewhere else, like, offensive line. Again, only 23 players have a cap hit over $3 million. Let's not act like it's zero. And then one of the guys I follow, I won't call him out by name here, but, apologizing for it. It's like, well, the Falcons have almost no dead cap nowadays because they've done a good job of roster management. Brother, their dead cap is sitting in their quarterback room right now. 31 out of 32 teams would have parted ways with Kirk Cousins by now. So that's your dead cap money, okay? Let's not act like there's no waste on here and you can afford to flush $3 million down the drain. $3 million is either a really good backup player or, in some cases, a starter for this. So, again, if I like what I see, now let's flip this to the positive. Going through and watching camp and watching preseason, I've reeled off the names of of the players that look good out there. Nick has talked about the defensive line. I'm like, listen, there's no proven other than David Onyemata, but I'm seeing Zach Harrison look good out there. Brandon Dorlus looks pretty good out there. Taquan Graham, I've always been a big fan of. That's 3. David Onyemata. And then you go, Contavious Street is a solid interior player. I'm forgetting one. LaCale London isn't who I think I'm forgetting. There's somebody else in there I'm forgetting. Because there's 6 guys I like. And Morgan Fox wasn't one of those 6. So I think it's all pretty good. It's organic. Good morning, Scott. I'm sorry. This one jumped on me. Marquise. Scott is the greatest after the fact guy on YouTube. Smack my head. Marquise, I am so opinionated that you will get predictions and prognostications all the time. I certainly do not hindsight grade. I do not. I will say what I think and I will stick to it. And if I'm wrong, I will admit I was wrong. That said, Morgan Fox was a waste of money. Okay. I'm not blaming. It seemed like it seemed like a good signing at the time. I'm just asking, let's not gloss over it like this is a good thing. Flushing $3 million down the drain. Okay. On that one here. So on that note, I want to say hello to some folks as we start getting into this that have been here already. Like John, who says, good morning from Candace. Get the show started. Absolutely. James is here already. Austin, I want to come back to this one before we hit a couple super chats about Lael Collins, because the answer to this is yes. I want to say thank you from Trenton. He's saying for the lights, keeping the lights on, keeping this forehead nice and shiny. Appreciate the super chat and the support of the show. Curtis Case comes in. Curtis says, good morning, Scott. The last game was hard to watch. Do we know why Ulbrich left the game? Just said personal reasons. I haven't followed up on it. I don't think it's anything long-term. And it's hard to tell how this team will be since we haven't seen anything from the starters perform yet. And yeah, it's interesting, Curtis, because most starters look kind of rough out there. If you're watching any of the other teams, it's preseason football, and the starters are out there, and the people are complaining about their starters looking bad. I'm like, well, which is worse? Putting them out there and trying to knock off some of the rust, or not playing them at all, and then you hope that they're able to flip the switch. But if they don't, then you blame the fact that they didn't play at all. So would you rather be complaining that they didn't look good or that they didn't play? Because right now everybody's complaining about the preseason. It doesn't matter if they played or not. Everybody's complaining. So I feel pretty good about this offense. I do not expect a repeat of week 1 last year. Week 1 was a disaster. It was a disaster. I couldn't believe. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to overreact for the long haul, because they will make adjustments. But that week 1, the predictability of the offense, the statistical predictability of the offense was unprecedented. It's like if they lined up in this formation, it was a run like 17 out of 18 times. If they lined up in this formation, it was a pass 20 out of 21 times. It's like, you can't do that, man. And they didn't. That was an easy fix. Again, going back to self-scouting on this. But good morning, Curtis. And, it's hard to tell how this team will look since we haven't seen the starters perform yet. The thing is, though, we have. We have seen it. The biggest question mark out there really now, well, you've got one, is right tackle, and then is Penix. But we have seen Penix. How sharp is he going to be to begin with? I tell you what, he was razor freaking sharp in camp, and during joint practices, razor sharp. Now, since we last talked, there's been some problems here at the offensive tackle position that we haven't gotten to talk about. And going through this, Caleb McGarry is going to miss significant time. So on the 53-man roster, he will get an injury list designation, the one you are hoping for. Raheem Morris said that. He will be getting an injury list designation. The one you are hoping for is designated to return. So they've changed the rules up a little bit here on this. And you are allowed to, before, if you wanted to put a guy on the short-term injured reserve list, you had to put him on the 53, designate him, and then re-sign somebody. They didn't make you do that this year. This year, you are allowed to immediately designate 2 players for the return list, which means they have to miss the first 4 games, but you don't have to waive somebody else. They don't have to be on the initial 53. So that means 2 players who would have been cut and re-signed will make this initial 53. Candidates for this, you're hoping that it's Caleb McGarry. It gets an injury because Raheem Morris said he will get an injury designation. You hope it's short term. If it's not, he's done for the season. They haven't come out and said significant time. We'll see. Significant time to me is at least a month. That would be the first 4 games of the season. Storm Norton, 6 to 8 weeks more, 6 to 8 weeks more since the surgery. Misses all of training camp. Then he gets the surgery. Now he misses 6 to 8 more weeks. So he's been out, 3 months for something that wasn't really concerning? Well, I'm concerned. He's going to be out at least 3 months for this ankle. But now 6 to 8 more weeks. Storm will probably get one of those because his timetable has been set 6 to 8 weeks. The other players you're looking at, Troy Anderson, does he get an injury designation or not? But again, going back to the offensive line, Eli Wilkinson's your guy for now. There's just no way it's going to be Jack Nelson. He looked dreadful in the preseason. He's not ready. 6'7", 315-pound offensive lineman from Wisconsin. He's not ready. Eli Wilkinson is a solid backup guard. At right tackle, it's a concern, especially in pass sets, but Caleb McGarry was a concern in pass sets. So we've talked about this. Do you think they trust Caleb McGarry to protect the blind side of Michael Penix Jr.? The answer is no. No, they do not. That's why Charlie Warner is your starting tight end. That doesn't change. Charlie Warner will be glued to the hip of whoever the right tackle is. They'll basically be going out there with 6 offensive linemen. That's not going to change. Caleb McGarry is an elite run blocker. Elite. Chris Lindstrom, right guard. Caleb McGarry, right tackle. Charlie Warner, tight end on that right side, is as good as any in football. I'm replacing him with a guard. Okay. So that means I should be able to still run the ball as long as they're not stacking the box too much. So my initial thoughts on this are, good God, they are so toast at right tackle. I believe they will sign somebody and try and work them out. Will that be Lael Collins? I'd be on the phone with them, no doubt. Come in for a workout. We want to see you move. Work out for a week. We'll see if you make the team or not. It might cost somebody the roster spot for a little while. Sign him to the practice squad. It might happen. If you get him, I think there'll be enough demand that you have to put him on the 53 and give him a little bit of guaranteed money. Like $3 million. Won't be that much. I'm teasing. But they will be in the market for offensive tackles, and I swear every single offensive lineman I have seen waived in the last 24 hours, I have looked them up on Pro Football Reference and PFF to see if they were tackles. Terry Fontenot and the Atlanta Falcons are doing the exact same thing. But right now it's Eli Wilkinson, and he and Charlie Warner are going to be joined at the hip on the field, and it will limit some of the things you're able to do in pass sets, but you got to protect your quarterback first and foremost. And then in the running game, I don't know that you're going to lose a ton because Eli's a guard. Interior linemen like to mash. So yes, I would be on the phone with Lael Collins and see what he's got. He was just cut from the Cowboys for sure. Let me see here. Sam Clont says, I think C.J. Henderson makes a team, and I hope he pushes for cornerback too. They've got a lot of corners still out there. So on the corners, they still have 11 on the roster. They still have 11 corners on the roster. I think they kept 6 last year. In alphabetical order, D. Alford, Billy Bowman, Natron Brooks, Kobe Bryant, Mike Ford Jr., C.J. Henderson, Mike Hughes, Dante Manning, Clark Phillips, Keith Taylor, and A.J. Terrell. Lamar Jackson was cut. Of those that I think should be pretty safe, A.J. Terrell, Mike Hughes, Billy Bowman. After that, I'm not sure. There's room to make here, but D. Alford might make this team as a cover guy. If he's, ironically, that's where people have had the biggest problems with him. Billy's going to make this team. Natron Brooks has had a good. I don't know that Kobe Bryant's going to make this team. He might get re-signed to the practice squad. Should be Mike Ford, meh. Dante Manning, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know who that was. Keith Taylor, I wasn't sure who that was either. He's not going to make this team. So CJ Henderson, if you're going to make the team, cornerback is your best bet. Like, to just come in an offensive line. That's where it's most open right now. So CJ Henderson's got a chance to do this, to make this 53. Psalm, good to see you. Hope you are doing well. Other Austin, hope you are doing well too. Good to see you, Terry Clark. False start Falcons. And like Psalm said, the only surprise guy that was cut was Morgan Fox. Now, the cuts that were made were Ben DiNucci. You know, we told you that when we wrote it up. He's going to be here a week. He's here to help finish the 90-man practices so you have enough quarterbacks to work everybody out. When they get down to 53, he's gone. He was, and he knew that. He knew that, and he was a good sport about it, posting some stuff on his social media accounts. Running back Elijah Dotson, Jesse Matthews, wide receiver Quincy Skinner, tight end Nikola Kalinick. I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He looked solid, though, out there. So I'm hoping he might be a practice squad person. OL Matthew Cindric, Morgan Fox, edge Ronnie Perkins. He was just signed a week ago. A couple of linebackers, Caleb Johnson and Nick Kubitz. Safety Josh Thompson, who played a lot in the preseason, and cornerback Lamar Jackson, who just he's just not very good. Those were your 12 cuts so far, going down from 90 to 78. It's a 53-man roster, but they can really go to 54, 55, 56 players. I say that because you're going to have 2 injury designations, and then Lenny Craig will probably get the international designation as well, which doesn't count against your 53. So they got down to 78. They need to get down to 56, so to speak. So there's still 22 more cuts to make. Michael Ronquillo, good morning over on YouTube. Hope you are doing well. DJ Crush it, DJ. He says, rise up. Marcus Cook, good morning. And Philip Crawford, good morning back at you. Michael Dubb says, good morning from beautiful Bermuda. There's a little programming note for y'all. I will not be here on Monday. This reminded me here. So I am celebrating my 25th wedding anniversary next week. And in doing so, I'm going to Jamaica for a few days over the long weekend. Now, this reminds me of a story. So 25 years ago, I was getting ready for my wedding, and we decided to move our wedding up because planning weddings is kind of a pain in the ass, and we didn't want to wait another 6 months to the day we met. That was a Saturday. We were going to do that. I was like, God, this is a pain in the ass. So we moved it up to September, but being a good SEC person that I am, I moved it to a Sunday afternoon. Now, I had season tickets at the time about right here. I'm pointing to the back corner of the end zone in the second level. I had seats. I had season tickets there. I actually went the day of my wedding. I went to, and I'm pretty sure it was the 49ers, September 3rd, 2000, Falcons 49ers. I actually went to that game with my dad just to chill, enjoy some football before I went to the game. I'm like, I'm so smart. I'm so considerate. I'm going to go to my game on I'm gonna move this on a Sunday so my SEC friends and family don't kill me for having a Saturday fall wedding. I never once considered anniversaries. Never even crossed my mind. And my anniversary screws with the opening of football season every year. Every year it does. But, no big deal. 25 years. If that's as bad as it gets, it's going to be okay. So never even thought about anniversaries and the problems in my football world that might have. So all good though. But I will not be here Monday. I will actually be in Jamaica. I'm going to do some scuba diving and then come home, and I'll be back Tuesday night for the Wednesday. And we'll probably end up doing a Friday show then too, to make up for it. Trenton's not happy. Trenton's looking at this and the injuries, the lackadaisical play in the preseason. What's that, 0-6 now? Didn't the Falcons drop all 3 of them last year too? And then they came out and they lost to Pittsburgh, but then go on the road and beat Philly. But I don't expect a showing as bad as we saw against Pittsburgh last year. That was dreadful. A lot more experience in the coaching booth now with Zach Robinson. A lot more experience with your healthy quarterback and not coming off of an injury in Michael Penix Jr. But 50-50 chance we come out 1-7, save it. It's a tough opening schedule for sure. But not every team is going to be who we think they're going to be, and including the Atlanta Falcons for that matter. But you open with Tampa Bay. That one's tough. On the road against Minnesota, they're breaking in a new quarterback, but their defense is solid. At Carolina, it would have been nice to get – I would have rather have gone to Tampa Bay and then Minnesota and Carolina at home, right? Washington is a playoff contender. Buffalo is an AFC power. And then again, on the road at San Francisco, home against Miami, and the bye weeks in there, that might help. And then at New England. Those are your first 8 games. I don't see 1-7. I don't. I think if you go 500 out of that bunch and then start getting some guys healthy and avoid injuries, again, this ticker here at the bottom should say everything that we say on this show is subject to change based on injuries. It's kind of an understood, but I don't see a 1-7. I think a lot of people here would be, kind of mad if we did. No, I did say 2-15 in 2022 with that team. But it was I don't see 1-7, Trenton, and we won't be mad. I understand when we get to Rusty. If Rusty's in here today, he's probably agreeing with you. Speaking of which, real quick, throwback to 2022. I was looking at salary caps this morning as I was getting ready for the show, and I was looking at backup quarterbacks and what they are paid. And yes, Kirk Cousins makes 4 times more than any other backup quarterback. The next highest paid quarterback is Anthony Richardson, who was a number 4 overall pick, and he's still on his rookie contract. His second is it's like $9.8 million is his cap hit this year. I think there's only 2 other quarterbacks over $6 million, and everybody else is below 5. One of them is Jacoby Brissett. I think he's like 5.5. Tyrod Taylor, I think, is at 6, so I may have missed one here. But not counting Kirk Cousins, not counting Anthony Richardson, who lost a starting position, the highest paid backup in the NFL, wait for it, Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota has $8 million guaranteed this year to be a backup for the Washington Commanders. I couldn't believe it. Now, I knew they had a bunch of money. They had a bunch of salary cap money. $8 million for Marcus Mariota? And people say when, we wrote up the story about, hey, Easton Stick looks like a viable backup. Well, go look at the salary caps. Most backups are between $1 and $3 million. That's what you're expecting. Yes, he looks like a viable backup. That's what you're expecting from your backup quarterback. Is just, okay, and cheap. $8 million. I'd rather have Easton Stick than Marcus Mariota. And you got $8 million on him? Whew. That seemed a little strange for me on this one. It's organic with a nice note for everybody. Good to see you. He says, good morning, Scott. Everybody hit that like button. Yes, please. And AJ has a great question. Scott, realistically, is it possible to add an offensive tackle better than what Wilkinson gives us? Yes. Whether a trade, cut, or signing, is it realistic, or are we just going to have to work with what we have? I've laid out how it's going to work with what the Falcons have. It's going to be Eli Wilkinson with Charlie Warner in his hip. It's going to be a 2-man right side, period. If they come out, if Eli Wilkinson is out there naked, sorry, but you know what I mean, by himself out there on the right side without any help, it'll be a quick pass or a run. It'll be a get rid of the ball in a hurry. It will not be a 7-step drop, scan the field, figure out where to go through your progressions and throw. It'll be a quick hitter, and it'll be a tip to the other team, the defensive line, and the linebackers and the coordinators will look, okay, they've got him by himself. The ball's coming out quick. Let's start moving up. Okay, well, let me throw a fade out to Drake if I get one-on-one to try and combat that. There are ways to help mitigate the problem you have while you hope that you can cover it up for a little while. But the main way on this is going to be Charlie and Eli are going to be working together. They're going to be one person out there, and Charlie's a blocking tight end. That's what he's there for. But can they do better than that in after cuts? They're going to be scouring the waiver wires exactly the same way I have been the last 24 hours. Is offensive lineman tackle experience is any good? Get on the phone. Will that person be on the team on week 1? I don't know, but they will be diligent in trying to find somebody to come out here and do that. Harry says, please ask, are we live? There isn't levels to live. That's because Troy always comes in and asks, how live are we? It's either live or we're not, but we are 25 minutes into the show. God, already? This is flying by. 25 minutes into the show is where we are now. And TJ comes in. He says, funny to me how negative people viewed McGarry for years. Now the season is over without him? ? Fox signing was mid. Now it's such a loss he was cut. It's always something. And TJ, part of that comes along with 7 straight losing seasons and being one of the 5 historically worst teams in the NFL. They haven't earned the benefit of the doubt with some of these moves, but the cynicism is earned. It's not just people are complaining. The Falcons fans are abused, man. They're used to being kicked. I mean, I understand the negativity. We will try and present both sides, but there's always this feeling of here we go again, because we've been on this ride for 60 years. Falcons fans have. So I get it. But again, McGarry, what's McGarry's strength? Bonk. McGarry's strength is run blocking. Okay. And we said before, I've said it a zillion times, no, you do not trust him in pass protection. That's why Charlie Warner is there. That's why Charlie Warner had more snaps than Kyle Pitts to end the season last year. I like Storm Norton as a swing tackle. I did. I said, okay, I'm not overly worried about the offensive line depth because I think Eli Wilkinson's a good guard, and I think Storm Norton is a good offensive tackle, swing tackle to go in, and it's done a decent job. That makes 7 offensive linemen, and you usually only keep 8. So you're okay, at least 8 active on game days. That's okay. Well, now Eli's moving to right tackle where he's not very good, and Storm's out. So, yeah, I'm a little concerned about that position. But as we said, we've gone through several ways. I think this will, you can mitigate this. There's enough other good spots out there. And again, it helps having Charlie Warner. It really does. Charlie Warner is arguably the best blocking tight end in the game. That makes a difference. He's going to help whoever is out there, including Caleb McGarry on that. Let me see here. Xavier has a question. He says, is it that the team spent money on Fox and then cut him, or is that he didn't look good as they thought and live up to his namesake? It's Morgan Fox. Well, Xavier, to be fair, he didn't get a ton of money. He got reserve lineman money. He got $3 million guaranteed. It was only like 1.5, and it was a 2-year deal. And if you move on from him, it's going to cost you $3 million. It cost you $3 million. And frankly, he didn't look as good as someone like Brandon Dorless. And the thing is, he didn't make sense. People kept calling him a nose tackle, or like a defensive tackle. That didn't really ever make sense. This is why we talked about, if these are your guys, a 4-man front makes so much more sense. He's too small to be a 3-4 defensive end. 275 pounds. He's okay, but he's more of a true 4-3 defensive end and he's not really necessarily quick enough to be out there. So there was kind of like a depth signing, and maybe he can help do some things in the room. But the guys that they have, I like better for what they're trying to do. I absolutely do. And I have not been nearly as down on this defensive line as a whole as the rest of creation. And I understand it. If they say the Falcons have the number 30 defensive line in the NFL, I understand that. They want to see results. They have to see it. They're reactionary. They're not predictive. Even stuff like the future power rankings. Oh God, I almost cussed. But for goodness sake, they look exactly like the regular power rankings. It's like, oh yeah, you've got a good quarterback. Well, what about your young players? What about these guys? They don't. The NFL, when they do prognostications, they don't care about unproven players. They really don't. They will go overboard the second an unproven player starts to look good, though. They will overcompensate, right? Jaden Daniels, like seeing Jaden Daniels in the top 5 of these quarterback lists feels a little premature to me for something like that. But Xavier, flat out, Morgan Fox was not one of the 6 best defensive linemen on this team. That's what it boils down to. He was not. And now he's not on the team. So that's okay. If this speaks well for the increased depth of the defensive line, what I would have liked to have seen is that to have been understood beforehand, and now I can use that $3 million somewhere else. Maybe I get somebody else other than Jordan Fuller at 1.5. Maybe I can spend a little bit more money on that at safety. Maybe I can get a little bit better for my 8th offensive lineman because I've got another $1 million to throw here or there. It's all part of roster management on there. But the positive side of this is I don't think I like the young defensive line, and I have since we've started this podcast since training camp on that. Want to come back to Jet Jones is here coming in with a super. Says, good morning, Scott. This podcast is definitely my favorite part of this 4-hour drive every Monday. Well, where are you going, brother? That is a long way. So glad I can help kill an hour for you. I do audiobooks is what I've started doing for my long drives. But this does certainly, I could look down and I was like, wait, we're at 25 now. We're at 31 minutes already. It's flying by. So I'm glad that you are here with us. And I'm happy that it's humbling that y'all are here to spend the time with me this morning on this. Let me see. Terry comes in. He says, the kid we took in the 7th round from Wisconsin, that's Jack Nelson, doesn't need to be on the field this season. If he is, the offense is in trouble. You don't take a 7th round offensive tackle to play him in the first year. You just don't. And if it is, there's problems. And you've lost 2 offensive tackles before you have a chance to replace them. Jack Nelson should be a reserve all season. I like taking a developmental tackle in the 7th. I don't want to have to play him. He didn't look very good in training camp. He didn't look very good in the preseason. He looked like a 7th round rookie is exactly what he looked like. And that's okay. That's what he was. Get a guy with some traits and hope he develops. That is good draft strategy. But again, I don't necessarily want him to play. I'm still scrolling down through the comments, and I'm like 20 minutes behind saying hello to some folks. So I'm actually going to scroll all the way to the bottom and start working my way up a little bit on this stuff. So we'll get to that. Justin Boyd talking about Kyle Pitts says Kyle Pitts isn't a tight end. They're just paying him tight end money, with their 5th-year option, and hopefully, if they go to franchise tag. I think Taryn Womack. What's her last Taryn? Anyway, I don't actually say their last name, so I don't remember them. I just see them. I think it's Whack. I think it's just W-A-A-K, like C-K. Did a 53-man roster prediction. And for the Atlanta Falcons inner commentary, she said, I debated keeping 2 tight ends, and I responded back to her on X. Well, technically, by snap counts, you did. Because Kyle Pitts takes 80% of his snaps as a wide receiver. So something else to think about there. Let's get into this just a little bit. Carrie's here. I want to say hey to Carrie. Hey, Scott, hope you're doing well. I think Fox not making it shows that our young defensive line has been developing and doing well, which is good news. Yeah, it is good news. But Carrie, the way I would say is I don't think just throwing another $3 million, just to recap from the first couple minutes since you just came in, just going through $3 million like that is good news. He was and people are like, well, it's just $3 million. Well, 23 players have a cap hit of $3 million or more. That's it. So $3 million could have been used somewhere else if you had done, I don't want to say a better, but if you had done this job of scouting your internal players and what you've got, you might not have signed Morgan Fox. You could have used that $3 million somewhere else. Now you can't. So I don't want people to gloss over the fact that $3 million is nothing, because it is something. That's $3 million is a quality player in the NFL. And I wish this had been done beforehand. Like, oh, we don't need him. Well, then don't sign him. You didn't know that going in because, well, why not? Because we're not working off injuries here. This isn't like, oh, we weren't sure that Braylon Trice was going to come back where he was. This was Brandon Dorlus, Ruka Rohoro, these are guys you already had on your roster before this. So Morgan Fox getting released, we could see it coming early, honestly, on that one. So Terry Walk, is that how you say it? Terry Walk. Yeah, it's strange. It'd be copy and paste. Taryn Walk. I haven't actually heard or watched her podcast or anything to hear her say it on that one. Let's go through here real quick on some of the players you think that could be, on their way out, and we'll just go position by position pretty quickly here. And Carrie, I'm going to hit Carrie again real quick. She says, I'm not comfortable with Wilkinson as our starting right tackle based on what I've seen him in the preseason. Hope I'm wrong or we have another plan. And no, you're absolutely right. He's not a good right tackle. He is a serviceable guard. He is a bad right tackle. He will have Charlie Warner in his hip pocket as long as he's out there. So on that one. And Jack says, glad you made it. Jack says, what's up? Hope you're doing well. He's getting the coffee emoji. I'll drink to that. I got my Lion coffee. Drinking out of my dragon mug. So let's pray McGarry isn't out for the season. Either way, you're looking at 4 to 6 weeks of code red at right tackle because Storm's not go back for 6 to 8 weeks, and McGarry's going to be at least out 4 on that. So not good news. But quarterback here, Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr., Easton Stick. I believe all 3 of them will be on the 53. Now, there are some questions again. Why would you cut your third quarterback when he doesn't count? Yes, he does. The rule on the third quarterback is for game day rosters. You're allowed to keep 48 players active for game days, and that includes practice squad elevations. So you've got healthy scratches. You've got guys you do not suit up on game day from your 53 active roster. You're allowed to keep a third quarterback that does not count towards those 48 as long as he is on the 53-man active roster. So if you want to keep an emergency third quarterback for game day, he has to be on your 53-man roster. That said, Easton Stick has looked like a viable backup. Kirk Cousins is the backup quarterback in Atlanta. He could be a trade candidate. Easton Stick. I don't think they will because I think they're still hoping someone comes before the trade deadline. Someone comes for Kirk Cousins and offers up, to take on the rest of his 27 guaranteed this year and gives him a 3rd or 4th round draft pick, something along those lines. So you want Easton Stick. If I don't have Easton Stick, I can't trade Kirk Cousins. But the Las Vegas Raiders lost their backup quarterback, and they're looking for somebody with some experience. Easton Stick has West Coast experience. He's been in the league for a long time. He is exactly what you're looking for, a backup. The Falcons traded their third-string quarterback after keeping 3 quarterbacks last year. They traded Taylor Heineke to the Chargers for a 6th, I believe, last year. So Easton Stick, I do believe, will be on this team. That's 3. Running backs is a little tougher on here. Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, those are money. You expect those guys to be on there. We haven't seen Carlos Washington at all. Is there anything that leads us to believe that Carlos Washington should definitely be on this team? Because I like Nathan Carter. I really do. They kept 4 last year, but one of them was Avery Williams, and I don't think they can do it this year. I don't think they can keep 4 because all your special teams guys are at wide receiver this year. So you can't keep 4 running backs. So it's Bijan, it's Tyler Algier, and right now, Nathan. That's where I'd go. I'd certainly seen a lot more out of them. And then they kept 5 wide receivers last year, and I think they're going to have to keep at least 6 because one of those guys is your return guy, and do they sneak a 7th on there? But you're talking Kaderil Hodge, Drake London, Ray McLeod, Darnell Mooney, Casey Washington as your 5, and then Jamal Agnew as a return guy. If he makes this team, Jamal Agnew is 6 as your return guy. And then it comes down to probably David Sills or Chris Blair. And then Nick Nash you're hoping to get on the practice squad. And I like Dylan Drummond too. I really like the back end of this wide receiver group. And I will be interested to see where they end up because I'm not even counting, I'm not going to count Jamal Agnew because we haven't seen him at all. But there are 9 wide receivers that have suited up and look like pretty good players. We talk about Chris Blair, Dylan Drummond, Nick Nash, David Sills, And I think Casey Washington make it. But those four, none of those four might make the team. So you're going to have to keep a little bit extra. And, as Justin says, Agnew needs to go because Agnew hasn't done anything. And can we count on him even being out there for week one? Am I going to keep my sixth or seventh wide receiver? My sixth wide receiver as an injury guy and taking up a roster spot? Probably not. Calder, this is great. There's a couple of there's a super I want to get to you that I want to come back to for you though as well. Mike has a question here with a super chat. Thank you, Mike. Does 10 wins get them in the playoffs? If the team only wins 8 or 9, is Raheem Morris on the hot seat in 2026? This comes back to the false pretenses or the logical fallacy or the loaded questions, things that we talk about. If he only wins 8 and misses the playoffs, I don't think he's on the hot seat in 2026. So I think he's pretty good chance they're gone. That to me is the line, is the over under is 8. 8's a push. If they go 8 and 9 and miss the playoffs, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I would lean towards cleaning house if they go 8 and 9 again. If 7, they're all gone. 9, I think they're safe. 9 wins, I think they're safe. If they're 9 and 8 and miss the playoffs, I still think they're safe. They're taking steps. 10 wins, does 10 win get them in the playoffs? Probably. That's been good enough for the last several years to get into the playoffs. So for me, the line for this team, the over-under on where is he safe? I set the over-under at 8 because I think 9 wins and you're okay. 7, you're in trouble. 8 is a push. I'm not sure what's going to happen if they're 8 and 9. I would lean towards cleaning house, playoff-ready roster, big investment into the quarterback room, trading up with multiple first-round picks to fix your defense, and you don't win any more games, and you win only 1 more in 2 years than Arthur Smith did with a threadbare roster and no money, I would lean towards. And then 5 straight losing seasons from your general manager, I would lean towards 8 and missing the playoffs, and they've got problems. They've got big problems in the administration. Now, let's say Michael Penix. Let's say it all falls on the defense again. Michael Penix looks spectacular. Let's say the offense is just humming, but they end up going 8 and 9 because they're getting in some of those 34-30 games like they did the end of the season last year, and they only go 8 and 9, but they score 30 points a game. You know who's a head coaching candidate then? Zach Robinson. Do they promote him? I don't know if they do or not, but someone is. Someone will. And there's always, just like there's always everything is awesome crowd, there's always the cynical crowd. And the cynical crowd wants to say, well, Zach Robinson hasn't shown anything. He hasn't proved anything. He does this wrong, this wrong, and this wrong, and this wrong. Nobody's perfect, for one. 2, the NFL drools over young offensive coordinators coming from the Sean McVay tree. And the average lifespan of an offensive coordinator in this league is 2 years. So Zach Robinson will either be gone because he didn't do a good job, or he will get a promotion somewhere to a head coaching job because he did. So, it was 2 years ago, there was an article that came out that every single team had a new offensive coordinator after 2 seasons. So nobody was their third year. The only ones that are out there are the head coaches that call their own plays, like Andy Reid, those types. But as far as true, the offensive coordinator was Eric Bieniemy, and he was not there. So every team within a 2-year span had a new offensive coordinator. Calder, good to see you. Calder says, what do you think of the nicknames for Tyler and Bijan, Nuke and Juke? I like it. Thunder and Lightning gets a little played out, doesn't it? It's like we need a little something different here. Nuke and Juke on that one. It doesn't roll on there, but it certainly is descriptive on there. So it's not bad. It's not bad on there. I like it. Let me see. I want to go down here a little bit on this. Yeah, and Jimmy says, way too much talent to allow bad season and no playoffs. If they win 8 or less, fire everybody. It's kind of leaning that way. I would lean that way too. But part of it is, again, you guys have heard me say this before. There's no such thing as being unbiased, right? Bias is all of our experiences in our life that help shape who we are and help make our decisions. There's no such thing as unbiased. So my bias in this case is watching Arthur Blank stick with guys too long. And we've seen him do it a bunch of times. Now, he didn't with Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith got his third year. He earned his third year, went 7-10 after $200 million in free agent money, and made a bad decision at quarterback and won the same amount of games, 7. He was fired. Okay. Well, that was more of my recency bias. Is Arthur Blank a little more ruthless? I don't know. And frankly, y'all, I don't want to find out. I don't. Let's get 10 or more wins in Atlanta and see what we've got here. So I don't want to find out. Sometimes I get a little tired of thinking what's the worst that could happen and watching it happen on that stuff. So we will see. Smitty coming in. Good to see you, Smitty. I'm on with Smitty tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm doing a podcast with y'all tomorrow afternoon. Smitty says, but were you surprised at the Morgan Fox getting cut? Smitty, no, I wasn't. And we could go back to the Monday or Wednesday, because I feel like I forgot about it on Monday, but the Wednesday after the Lions game, and I'm positive I said it on Monday, when I look down at the field and it's the third quarter and Morgan Fox is getting his first reps in the third quarter of a Raheem Morris game. Players that get their first reps in the second half of a Raheem Morris preseason game are not long for this world. Flat out, Smitty. So, but when I saw on there the where he was in the playing rotation in the preseason, we said then Morgan Fox was in trouble. He doesn't play guys that he expects to be part of this team in the second half, unless he has to. And with 7 or 8 defensive linemen, actually, there was more than that because it was preseason. So there were 9 defensive linemen, like Simeon Barrow Jr. and stuff. There were 9 out there. He was in trouble. He was in trouble on this. So I wasn't overly surprised on that one. Now, mention the offensive line. This gets let's go tight end. This is where I scratch my chin a little bit on this because I'm looking at Garrett Chapman's stuff, and he's been at all the practices, and he's got our new podcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays on here, and he keeps saying Felipe Franks ends up being the third tight end. Well, the second tight end behind Warner. I just don't know if I see that. I really don't. You've got Charlie Warner, and if I need a backup to Charlie Warner, I need a blocker. I don't need a backup to Kyle Pitts because Kyle Pitts is a wide receiver. He's lining up. If I need to get a replacement for Kyle Pitts' production, I do that with a receiver and the slotted out wide. I don't do it with a tight end. I don't replace Pitts with Felipe Franks. I replace him with Nick Nash or Dylan Drummond or Chris Blair or David Sills. But what about Charlie Warner? Who do I put in there for Charlie Warner? And I think you've got to go with your best blocking tight end out there. I'm not positive who that is. If it's, Quintariano or Joshua Simon, or has Felipe Franks become, enough of he realized, oh, wait a minute. I'm 6'5" and 250 pounds. I'm not a quarterback in a green jersey. I'm kind of a badass. We'll see. But it's, I don't know if Felipe Franks, I have questions on that, but including Pitts, they will keep 3 because they need a backup for Charlie Warner on that one. Offensive line gets interesting, and this is where the injury designations are going to come in. Do you use 2 of them on both Storm Norton and Caleb McGarry? I don't know. We'll find. That's where we find out. That's going to be the big question. You hope the answer is yes. And then does Troy Anderson, does he make the 53 because he's close to playing? Probably then. We'll see. You're the worst case right now is McGarry being injured, reserved, and out for the season. You get 2 injury designation guys. I don't think you might be able to get Troy Anderson through waivers if you wanted to try and cut him and re-sign him. You might be able to, but I think you're probably safer trying to do that with someone else and keeping one of those three guys. And actually the one that you're most likely to be able to get through waivers on that is probably Storm Norton. How would that look though, y'all? Falcons waive tight end or offensive tackle. Well, he's hurt. It makes sense. Makes sense to us, but that doesn't always how the Falcons get treated by people who don't always know, right? Let me see here. Mike Harvey says, I'm concerned Raheem Morris might be our 21st century Marion Campbell, the Peter principle. And it happens. The Peter principle is you keep getting promoted based on the job you do, and then you run into a ceiling where I'm not good enough to do the next level job. And being a coordinator is very different than being a head coach. We'll see. We'll see. There were some pretty big gaffes last year that cost a couple games from the head coaching that wouldn't have been made by someone with more experience. Raheem Morris has more experience this year. And frankly, I think he will be a little bit more cutthroat this year on stuff like that. Two of the big ones for me last year were Jimmy Lake and letting that defense go for too long. And then another one was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins should have been pulled. Kirk Cousins should not have started the week after the Broncos game where they had the bye. That was when they should have sat him down and gotten healthy. And, well, he hit his injury. Guys, I'm not buying it. Again, I'll use a pitching analogy here. If Chris Sale goes out there and his fastball's down 5 miles an hour and he gets rocked, he's not starting in 4 days, not until they see his velocity. It was obvious, and there's enough analytics out there between spin rate and ball velo and all this times of things to know that Kirk Cousins was not throwing the way he was supposed to throw. There was something wrong. And he waited too long and ended up losing the season on that. So those are two I think he'd like to have back. But yeah, Mike, I mean, how do you not like Raheem Morris? I mean, he's got a megawatt smile. He's super personable, but that doesn't mean I necessarily want him as my head coach. He's got to prove that. I said that about Nick Saban forever. I don't want him as my. I don't want him as maybe not want to go golfing with him. That's not necessarily true, but Nick Saban's kind of an ass, especially as a coach. Damn, he's a good coach. Sean Payton, we know he's an ass. He knows he's an ass, but he's a good coach. I don't need these guys to be. I mean, I root for someone like Raheem Morris. I want him to succeed for this franchise for Atlanta, but he's genuinely a good dude. So you want good people to succeed because there's not enough of them in sports and big money business like the NFL. Moving now, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. I think they kept I should have these numbers up in front of me. I think they kept 6 last year. And right now, I think 6 looks like the number. It depends on if they keep LaCale London or not. So you're Brandon Dorlus, Taquan Graham, Zach Harrison, David Onyemata, Rook, and Kentavious Street are your 6 for your interior line. Those are your guys. And then the bubble guy is LaCale London out there. Edge rushers, they only kept 4 last year. I think they keep 5 this year. Arnold Ebiketie, Leonard Floyd, James Pierce Jr., Braylon Trice, and Jalen Walker. I think they do keep 5 on there. Inside linebacker is where it gets interesting because they still have D'Angelo Malone listed as an edge, but really he's a special teams guy. Where else can we use him? And he's been playing inside linebacker out there. So, Divine, Caden are there. And then do you want JD Bertrand? Right now I think probably yes, but if I only keep 3 and Troy Anderson, would I rather have D'Angelo Malone or would I rather have JD Bertrand? And John, I think I saw you comment, or Michael Lewitzki, I think, came in and said, I'd rather have, D'Angelo Malone hasn't shown anything. JD Bertrand's at least looked good. No, he hasn't. I disagree 100%. JD Bertrand has looked not good enough to be out there on the field. And D'Angelo Malone has some upside where he can contribute. He's a really good special teams player. And as your 4th linebacker, fine. I think he's a better option at 4th linebacker, special teams, than JD Bertrand out there. But we'll see. Again, a lot of this is going to come down to injury designations and what they do with Troy Anderson. This whole I don't plan on seeing him week 1. I don't think anybody else does either. Safety, this one looks pretty set to me. Jesse Bates, Jordan Fuller, DeMarco Hellams, and Xavier Watts. That's 4. They already cut Josh Thompson. And then cornerback, my goodness. Again, Billy Bowman, Mike Hughes, AJ Terrell. Those are your locks. Those are the only 3 I would put my mortgage on the line, saying that they will definitely make it. After that, CJ Henderson looks like a guy who can make this team. Natron Brooks or D. Alford, Clark Phillips. Those guys are all fighting for spots on there. So they've got 11 guys still on the roster. Let me see how many they kept last year, just to be sure. Initial pops right up for me because I've typed it in so many times. In cornerbacks last year, they kept 5 out of the gate. 5. They kept 5 corners and 4 safeties. So I've mentioned 3 already. And then the other 3 the 5 they kept last year was AJ Terrell, Mike Hughes, D. Alford, Clark Phillips, and Antonio Hamilton Sr. The 3 they keep this year for sure are AJ Terrell, Mike Hughes, and Billy Bowman as your nickel. If they only keep 2 after that, is it CJ Ford? Or I'm sorry, CJ Henderson and then Mike Ford? Some questions there. There's some big questions there. There's none of them that make me that are like the Falcons haven't used a day 1 or day 2 draft pick on a cornerback since AJ Terrell in 2020. This depth chart of corners kind of shows that. There's nobody on there that's like, oh, we got to keep this guy. It's okay. Maybe we can make hay on this with our 3rd or 4th guy out there. And I think Billy Bowman Jr. is going to be the rookie that plays the most snaps in the first couple of weeks. He's going to be needed out there. And then your specialists are pretty well set. Younghoe Koo, Bradley Pinion at punter, and then Liam McCullough at long snapper. And then I think Lenny Craig gets the international designation. I think he has to pass through waivers to do so, though. So that will be interesting to see on that. Let me clean this up. We're right at about an hour. So I want to go through some of the other questions we have. Let's see. Trenton says, can we stop talking about Nash and Kobe Bryant, NCAA Hall of Famers? Nick Nash has looked good out there, though. Kobe hasn't been healthy enough to show anything, but Nick Nash has looked fine. I think he's looked really good in traffic. I don't think he's going to make this team. I think there's not enough spots. And you've got guys out there who have also looked good in Chris Blair, David Sills Jr., Casey Washington has locked up a spot, I think, on this team. So there's just not enough room. But I think Nash comes back to the practice squad, and I think Bryant would re-sign with the practice squad too. But remember, everybody, you can't just put them on the practice squad. That's not how it works. They have to pass through the waiver process. Not a lot of players get claimed. Everybody's always so scared when we cut our guys, everybody's going to come and get them. It doesn't happen very often. There's only like 5 or 6 across the entire NFL. Almost everybody re-signs their own guys. They want to hold on to their guys that have been there too. Rusty, I knew you were going to be on the negative side of this. Worst case scenario, 4-13, everyone gets fired. We don't make Zach Robinson the head coach, and the Rams have our pick, which is top 5, and we hire Lovie Smith. Yeah, or the Rams, Sean McVay retires, they hire Zach Robinson and the top 5 pick. Yeah, you know what's worse than being bad? There's 2. Being bad and boring, that's worse. But being bad and not having your first pick, that sucks. It sucks. We went through that when we were doing the Broncos for breakfast, and they traded away a couple first-round picks for Russell Wilson, and they stunk. It's like, yeah, but let's look at the draft and where we can. Crap, we can't even do that. We don't even get our reward for losing. So, worst case 4-13. I don't know. Looking at the best and worst case scenarios that came out, we've talked about this team as having a wide variance. The variance between best case and worst case from ESPN's article was 8 wins. It was something like 5-12 to 13-4, or it was probably 4-13, like Rusty said, up to +8 would be 12 12-5 was best case, something like that. But it was an 8-game spread, which was tied for the biggest spread in the NFL. Most teams were 5 games was from their best and worst case. And that says a lot. I agree 100%. It says a lot about this team. It is a high variance because there are so many questions on this. But like we said, there's multiple answers to most of the questions that they have. And hopefully when you've got multiple solutions, one of them will be right. One of them will be the right solution. You don't have a good pass rush. Yeah, but Leonard Floyd, Jalen Walker, and James Pierce Jr. are there to address things. And Jeff Ulbrich is there to actually play defense instead of backpedal. Get on your bikes and ride backwards. Those are big things. Those are a lot of things that can help the team. You lose Justin Simmons. Okay, well, sign Jordan Fuller, who's been in the system before. Again, Jeff Ulbrich should put everybody closer to the line of scrimmage so they're not out there tackling and trying to tackle in way open space. And you drafted Xavier Watts, who looks pretty good as well. So again, there's multiple answers to just about all of these questions. Hopefully one of them ends up being the right one. But on that note, I am just about to get out of here. Let's say some goodbyes on here. Michael Ronquillo says, great show today, Scott, on the Falcons podcast. Thank you, sir. Jack says, do you have your eye on any OTs that might get cut around the league? Jack, the Jets waived a lineman yesterday. I checked out. But he was a guard, and he's 26 years old in a guard. I'm like, he didn't quite fit. I don't have my eye on any offensive tackles yet because I just don't know enough about every other team out there. I don't know the back end of their roster to see. I just know experience tells me there's going to be some guys. The Falcons have, let's see, they had 14 offensive linemen in camp. They kept how many last year? They kept 9 last year. So they were cutting 5 last year. They kept 9. If everybody's cutting 5, that's 30 times 5. That's 150 linemen that are about to hit the waiver wire. Is one of those better? One better than Eli Wilkinson at right tackle? What odds do you want to give that one out of 150 guys that are about to be out of jobs is better than Eli Wilkinson? I'll take that bet. I'll take the field. I'll take the field on that one. So yes, I've got my eye plastered to the waiver wire. I don't necessarily know the names yet. I don't know the rest of the rosters good enough. Joe, he says, does Nathan Carter make the 53? I think so. I think so. Unless they are so enamored with Carlos Washington that they're willing to keep him as the third running back, despite the fact that he's hurt, which doesn't make any sense to me. But again, I can't tell you how many times I'm wrong trying to predict what the Falcons are going to do because I think historically and logically, and they do things that aren't always kind of by the book. So I'm wrong on the Falcons a lot compared to other teams that I cover. But I would think Nathan Carter makes his team, and I think Carlos Washington, I haven't seen enough out of him. Maybe they have. But I haven't seen anything that makes me think Carlos Washington should be a lock for this one. Let me see here. Let me see. As Terry's saying the backwards, there's no way in hell the Falcons only get 8 wins with a healthy Michael Penix. He's just too good to be a loser. Confident with the ball in his hands, 9 to 11 wins most likely. It's the other side of the ball. It's the defensive side of the ball, I think. I like the offense out here. I think the offense is going to be good, even with your big concern at right tackle. And, people see the big contract that Drew Dahlman got. He only played half the snaps last year. Ryan Newsel played the other half. And they were good when Ryan Newsel was playing. They were 5-1 until Kirk got hurt and they kept playing him. They were 5-1 in Ryan Newsel starts. Caleb McGarry is good. He's not Chris Lindstrom. And he's got his replacement, Eli Wilkinson. His strength would be run blocking. That should help mitigate the strength of Caleb McGarry, who was a liability in pass blocking. All right, I needed to help him anyway. So we'll see on that one. And then the Falcons will be diligent on hitting the waiver wire Tuesday afternoon, starting right now for offensive tackles. That's for sure. And it is a good college football weekend. I know I'll be looking forward. Auburn plays Baylor on Friday night. Clemson, LSU, the battle at Death Valley. That one's at Clemson. Should be a good one as well. Looking forward to that game. I will be out of town. Reminder, I will be here Wednesday. I will not be here Monday. And I'll remind you all again next day. Otherwise, I think we are just about out of here. Jimmy, Carson Wentz signed with the Vikings. Yes. Who'd they trade? Was it one of the Sams? I think they traded the Eagles, not Ellinger because he's in Denver, but it was one of the other backups. How something like one of the lifetime backups. They traded the Eagles and then signed Carson Wentz on that one. Will Nick be here next Monday? I'm not sure. And thank you, Ron. It was Sam Howell. I get Ellinger and Howell confused sometimes as guys that are just basically lifetime third stringers. One of the Sams, but they moved him. And then the Vikings signed Carson Wentz as a backup because looking at the as I was going through this salary cap chart on quarterbacks, I got down to Minnesota because Minnesota is spending the 31st amount. They've only got $5.8 million in their entire quarterback room, which is 31st. New Orleans has $4.2 million. Thanks, Mr. Carr. God, what a gift they got. My goodness. They only have that much in their on their salary cap. 4.8. I don't think this counts dead cap, though, honestly. It's just active. But Minnesota's 5.8, and I look over and it says J.J. McCarthy, $5 million. And then the next guy over says Max Brosmer for $840,000. Who the hell is Max Brosmer for $840,000? Yeah, they definitely needed some experience back there as a backup. And I just joked on X. I'm like, damn it, there goes my Kirk Cousins to the Vikings story. It wasn't happening. I was just kidding, y'all. On that note, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks, Carrie. Glad you were able to join us today. Mad Scientist, that is very flattering. Certainly appreciate it. I want to say thank you to our Super Chat superstars, which I would imagine also includes Antonio Langford. Thank you for coming in with the stars over there on Facebook. It certainly helps. So thank you so much for all of the support. Our Super Chat folks, Trenton, Curtis Case coming in. Trenton come in a couple times, actually. Jet Jones, Mike with multiple Super Chats, Calder, and then Rusty coming in to close us out on here, and Antonio as well. Thanks, y'all. It is Monday. It's not quite game week, but we got a lot going on over the next 24 to 48 hours. Make sure you've got it locked on FalconsSI.com. We've got a tracker going there that shows all of the players that are still on the roster. It shows all of the players at the bottom who have already been cut, and we will keep updating that along with the news as it comes in moving forward. So make sure you go there, FalconsSI.com, look for our 53-man roster tracker. Otherwise, we'll be back on Wednesday with the gut reaction to the 53 and any of the surprises and how they manipulate this roster, knowing they've got some injury designations coming up, and on the lookout for waiver wire claims after the cuts come out, because again, 150 offensive linemen are about to hit the waiver wire. Falcons are in the market. On that note, I'm going to get out of here. I hope y'all had as good a time as I did this morning. We'll see you next time.